Imagine a land fractured. For centuries, a vibrant culture, a resilient people, caught in the relentless grip of internecine conflict. A land where North battled South, where dynasties rose and fell with a terrifying frequency, and the specter of war cast a long shadow over every generation. This was Vietnam for hundreds of years, a tapestry woven with threads of valor and betrayal, of ambition and despair. But then, a turning point. A single year, 1802, and a single figure, a man whose life was forged in the fires of exile and hardship, who would defy all odds to achieve the unthinkable, the unification of modern-day Vietnam. This is the story of Gia Long, a name that, though perhaps less known in the West, is etched deep into the annals of Vietnamese history. A story of how a dragon, seemingly defeated, rose from the ashes to forge an empire. To truly understand Gia Long's achievement, we must first journey back in time, far before his birth. For much of its history, Vietnam was not a unified entity. Following the collapse of earlier dynasties, two powerful families emerged to dominate the political landscape. The Trinh lords in the north, ruling from what is now Hanoi, and the Nguyen lords in the south, centered around Hue. For over 2 centuries, from the early 17th to the late 18th century, these two great houses were locked in a bitter, often bloody, struggle for supremacy. Though nominally loyal to the lay emperors, who held little real power, the Trinh and Nguyen essentially carved Vietnam into two warring halves. Border skirmishes escalated into full-scale campaigns, costing countless lives and stifling the nation's development. This constant state of conflict created a society accustomed to instability. The idea of a truly unified Vietnam, stretching from the northern mountains to the southern delta, seemed like a distant dream, an impossible aspiration. But the stage was set for an even greater upheaval, one that would nearly consume the Nguyen family entirely. Into this volatile environment burst a force unlike any seen before, the Tay Son Rebellion. Emerging from the south in the 1770s, led by 3 remarkable brothers, Nguyen Hach, Nguyen Hue, and Nguyen Lu, these peasant revolutionaries were driven by a powerful desire for social justice and an end to the perceived corruption of both the Nguyen and Trinh regimes. The Tay Son movement was a whirlwind. They rapidly swept through the Nguyen territories, capturing their capital, Hue, in 1775. The Nguyen family, including a young prince named Nguyen Phuc Anh, our future Gia Long, were forced to flee for their lives, becoming fugitives in their own land. The Tay Son's military brilliance was undeniable. Nguyen Hue, in particular, was a tactical genius. They routed the Trinh in the north, eventually taking Hanoi and effectively ending their long reign. For a brief, tumultuous period, the Tay Son brothers controlled much of Vietnam. They even repelled a Chinese invasion, solidifying their reputation as national heroes. But the Tay Son victory was not a lasting peace. Internal rivalries soon emerged among the brothers, and while they had dismantled the old order, a desperate young Nguyen prince was gathering his strength, biding his time, and learning the harsh lessons of defeat. Forced into exile, constantly pursued by the Tay Son, the young Nguyen Phuc Anh's story becomes one of extraordinary resilience. He was a prince without a kingdom, a leader without an army, facing seemingly insurmountable odds. He fled to various islands, even seeking refuge in Siam, modern-day Thailand, enduring countless close calls and betrayals. But Phuc Anh was not one to despair. He learned from every defeat, every setback. He understood the importance of loyalty, the value of a strong leadership. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to gather what remained of the Nguyen loyalists. These were men and women who believed in the legitimacy of the Nguyen line and were willing to risk everything for its restoration. His early attempts to retake territory were often met with failure. The Tay Son were powerful and well entrenched, yet each small victory, however fleeting, boosted morale and attracted more followers. He understood that military strength alone wouldn't be enough. He needed resources, strategic advice, and perhaps foreign support. This is where a truly fascinating character enters the narrative. Pierre Pignot de Behagne, a French Catholic priest. Pignot, seeing an opportunity for French influence and the spread of Catholicism, became a staunch advocate and advisor to Nguyen Phuc Anh. He helped Phuc Anh understand European military tactics, introduced him to Western weaponry, and crucially, helped him seek support from France. While direct French military intervention was limited, Pignot's efforts did secure vital military supplies, engineers, and a handful of trained European officers who brought invaluable expertise in shipbuilding, fortress construction, and artillery. This Western influence, combined with Phuc Anh's own tactical acumen, would prove transformative. Armed with renewed determination, growing support, and a more modern military approach, Nguyen Phuc Anh began his systematic campaign to retake the southern provinces. The internal conflicts within the Tay Son leadership, particularly after the death of the brilliant Nguyen Hue, created cracks in their formidable facade. Phuc Anh's strategy was methodical. He secured supply lines, built strong fortifications, and utilized his naval superiority, honed with French assistance, to control the waterways of the Mekong Delta. He understood that victory would not come from a single decisive battle, but from a relentless, sustained effort to wear down the enemy. Slowly but surely, the tide turned. City after city fell back into Nguyen hands. The Tay Son, once seemingly invincible, found themselves facing a more organized, disciplined, and technologically superior foe. The people, weary of decades of conflict, began to see Nguyen Phuc Anh not just as a returning prince, but as a potential unifier, a bringer of stability. By the late 1790s, Nguyen Phuc Anh had firmly re-established control over the entire southern region, solidifying his base and preparing for the ultimate challenge, the conquest of the north and the capture of the Tay Son capital in Hanoi. With the south secured, the stage was set for the final, decisive confrontation. In 1801, when Phuc Anh launched his grand offensive northward, it was a massive undertaking requiring meticulous planning and logistical genius. His army, now well-trained and equipped, moved with a purpose that had been absent in previous centuries of warfare. The campaign was not without its challenges. The Tay Son, though weakened, still commanded significant forces and fought fiercely to defend their remaining strongholds. But when Phuc Anh's determination was unyielding, he outmaneuvered his opponents, besieged key cities, and slowly tightened the noose around the Tay Son heartland. The climax came in 1802, with his forces converging on Thang Long, the ancient name for Hanoi. The last remnants of Tay Son power crumbled. The city, which had seen so much conflict and so many changes in leadership, finally fell to Nguyen Phuc Anh's triumphant army. It was a moment of profound historical significance. After decades of relentless struggle, after enduring exile, betrayal, and countless setbacks, Nguyen Phuc Anh had finally achieved what no other ruler had managed in centuries. He had conquered Hanoi and brought all of Vietnam under a single banner. With Hanoi secured, Nguyen Phuc Anh declared himself emperor, adopting the reign name Gia Long. He established his new capital in Hue, a city more centrally located and strategically significant for his newly unified empire. The Nguyen Dynasty, which he founded, would rule Vietnam for nearly 150 years. Gia Long's reign marked the true birth of modern Vietnam. He immediately set about the monumental task of consolidating his power and rebuilding a nation ravaged by war. He implemented administrative reforms, standardized laws, and began the arduous process of repairing infrastructure and fostering economic recovery. Crucially, Gia Long also asserted Vietnam's independence and sovereignty, navigating complex relationships with powerful neighbors like China. His unification was not just a military feat, it was the foundation for a new national identity, a sense of shared destiny for the Vietnamese people. The Dragon's ascent was complete. From a fragmented land of warring factions, Gia Long, through sheer will, strategic genius, and a dose of foreign assistance, had forged a unified nation. Gia Long's legacy is complex, like any historical figure. He was a ruthless warrior when necessary, but also a visionary leader who brought an end to centuries of devastating internal conflict. His unification laid the groundwork for the Vietnam we know today, a proud, independent nation stretching from north to south. While the Nguyen Dynasty would face new challenges in the centuries to come, including the eventual French colonialization, Gia Long's achievement of unification stands as a monumental turning point. He ended the feudal wars, brought stability, and created a sense of national cohesion that had long been absent. His story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, when a nation seems irrevocably broken, the indomitable spirit of a single individual combined with strategic brilliance and unwavering resolve can change the course of history forever. The dragon had risen, and Vietnam was finally won. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Vietnamese history. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Let us know in the comments what other historical figures or events you'd like us to explore.